Welcome back, everybody, to the Calling DFW. We are going to get into round 5. In about 5 minutes, we're going to kick off round 5. And I think round 5 is really where the rubber meets the road. What do you think?
I agree 100%. It's the point where you start seeing the more, I don't want to say better, but more fine-tuned pools, and you can see a lot more of the, just the front-running decks come to focus. And yeah, I'm really excited for it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think once we hit this moment, we're going to start really seeing those high-level players separate themselves and continue to just pick up wins. Because, again, we're going 7 rounds of Swiss, and 7 rounds of Swiss with their sealed deck that they've been playing this whole time. And once they've done that, then they're going to separate themselves, and then we go into draft, which is going to be another animal completely. How are you feeling about the draft?
I'm actually really, really looking forward to the draft. I think draft is going to be the place where we see Oldhim and Lexi really, really shine. We're going to see a lot more Oldhim and Lexi, in my opinion, once we start seeing, the draft decks come to light. Because that's where you can really fine-tune those kind of decks and sculpt them to be very, very powerful.
I would 100% agree, especially if, when you're in your draft pool, you notice as that first pack kind of wheels around, you start to see the element cards go and get picked, and then you start to see some of the class cards disappear, especially once you've hit the wheel, which is halfway through the pack, and you see your pack again. It's in that moment where good players are going to start to kind of separate out what they can pull in that first pack and where they should start heading down, and that's when we're going to see players really start to dive into the underpicked class. And maybe that underpicked class is Briar, but probably not. Maybe that maybe that underpicked class is Oldhim, and that's where things are going to get very interesting, because we did see an Oldhim game there in round, I think it was round 4, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In round 4, and it was a very different experience for the Briar player to have to try and just over push damage and get it past the defenses of Oldhim.
I really want to see more Oldhim, honestly. I think Oldhim is very, very interesting in Limited, and I would love to see Oldhim not only in Sealed but also in Draft to see how they sculpt their deck. If they go more towards like an Earth Oldhim with maybe focusing more on the 2 prevention reaction, or maybe an Ice Oldhim with more like hand denial kind of strategy. I think there's a lot of interesting plays there.
And I think that's a nuance that Oldhim players can pick and choose from, and one that I think fundamentally as playing Oldhim, you have to decide when you're building the deck. Are you going to invest heavily in pitching and using the defense reaction effect, or are you going to just focus on the cards that you have in your hand, use those to block, and then try to make some counterplay? Because in the game that we saw with Oldhim, we saw the player invest heavily in using the defense reaction, trying to kind of steal cards from the hand by pitching an ice card, or defending 2, perhaps preventing some sneaky damage from different effects by pitching an earth card. But if you don't do that, you have the possibility of putting pressure back on your opponent, and you can play a little bit of a tempo game, that tug of war that we see traditional Flesh and Blood players play. And I think for me, that's what I'm excited to see Oldhim players make the choice of. Are they going to use the defense reaction? Are they going to play the cards in their hand and play more the tempo game? How do you feel about that? Do you lean one or the other when you're playing as Oldhim?
I am a greedy player just in general. I'll be honest. I'm a greedy player just in general. So if I'm looking at my hand and I see like a big old 10 attack card, I'm like, I want to play this. I want to play this card. So there's a point where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I might do the defense reaction. I might, either get a card out of their hand if they're going wide, right? If I have like an ice card. But I'm just like, I want to hit him for 10.
Yeah.
I want to hit him for 10. Especially if you could get a turn where you can set it up, like maybe playing it from Arsenal where you can fuse it and get like Dominate or something like that.
Glacial Footsteps,
yeah,
for example,
Glacial
Footsteps.
Yeah, really, really sweet stuff. But, it's very resource intensive, so you need to have a good amount of cards, right? So it costs, 6 to play. So you need at least 2 blue pitch cards, maybe a card to fuse as well. So you kind of have to be greedy if you want to do stuff like that with Oldhim.
It's true.
But you could also do what you said, right? And then just kind of block a lot more and use your defense reactions a lot more and go that route. And I think there's something to be said for that, too. It kind of depends on what you got going on, especially if you get something sweet like that Majestic Hammer where you can block a little more and then just be like, oh, it's hammer time. I'm going to throw my hammer at you.
See, for me, I actually play Oldhim more the tempo route when I've played him because I think the the defense reaction effect is really great in those key moments.
Yeah.
And so waiting for those key moments is almost, for me, it's almost a better play, and then just playing the tempo game, slamming down things that attack for 6, attack for 7. Maybe you play like a snow under, and you fuse it, and so you're threatening 7 damage on the red one and a frostbite token generation, because now your opponent has to play suboptimal hands as well, not just you. And so in those instances, I actually prefer playing that game plan for Oldhim myself. So I'm curious to see if that is something that players in general, when they draft Oldhim, play towards, or if they want to use that defense reaction effect often and just play fatigue.
As an Oldhim player, I'm just very curious, which mode on the defense reaction do you like more? Do you like the 2 prevention, or do you like the one where they have to put a card on top of the deck?
I much prefer the pitch an ice card and force a card out of your opponent's hand.
Me too.
I much prefer that, and it's way better in situations where they don't have an arsenal as well. So that if they're holding a card and they're not floating resources, they know, oh, I can just pitch this away, force a card out of their hand. They can't pay for that attack that they're pushing.
Yeah, because if I'm playing Briar or Lexi and Oldhim does that to me, I'm very sad. Because I'm like, I want to go wide, and they're like, well, your card's gone.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I can't.
Exactly.
I can't do anything now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And look, speaking of Briar, we're actually ready to jump in to round 5 with some Briar players. Jumping into round 5, we see that we have a nice little Briar mirror match, which is a fun mirror match to watch play out, because it really depends on how much arcane, how many big attacks, and then who's going to steal that tempo first. And I'll be curious to see how this goes.
So it looks like we have a decent equipment loadout from both players. Brandon's going to kick it off with a all right.
Inspire Lightning, showing the ball lightning. No go again on this, but you don't really care, because this is just pure arcane damage.
He's just like, hey, let's start off the game. You're at 17.
Yes.
You don't start at 20. You start at 17.
3 damage, no way to block it. Sorry you can't even use your runaways because you haven't been dealt damage prior to this.
Yeah. You know what? I see that mark of lightning on Brandon's side. We've seen that card put in some work this weekend.
You know what else I love about this play? This, as the first turn player, you're not giving your opponent the ability to cycle their hands.
Absolutely.
So he has to play the cards he's been dealt. And in this case, he's got a decent little attack here in Twine Lightning, one of my favorite elemental attacks. And this will have go again thanks to the fuse. We saw like a blue Weave Lightning, I think it was.
Yeah, Weave Lightning. So this is like, 0 cost, 4 attack coming in. A really good way to start your turn. It's good to note that it is an attack action, not a non-attack. So,
wow, blocking with a red Earthlore Surge, saying that my hand is perhaps a little lighter on pitch, so I can't afford it. Or maybe just saying I'm content to get rid of this. Maybe they have a So tomorrow that they're going to fetch this for later.
So I do see...
Ooh, one of your favorite cards. Look, one of your favorite cards is Lightning Press.
One thing to note. Brandon's hand has 2 cards that don't block.
That's true.
Lightning Press and Ball Lightning, which is kind of rough, actually. It's kind of rough. Those cards are both really good, but that's kind of the downside of them. They don't block. And so he's sitting with a hand that literally only has 2 cards that can block, which is why we see him blocking with such a powerful card here.
It is.
The other option, it looks like a Bramble Spark, I want to say.
It's a Bramble Spark. So right now he can... Oh, my goodness. Ooh. Oh, and he hits the fuse.
So this is coming in for 7.
7 attack. This is 7 attack, and he's going to be able to arsenal that Autumn's Touch if he wants it on this next turn. He can arsenal it. Oftentimes, maybe you just hold on to that, and you're content to have it in your hand because you don't necessarily want to come in with that on your next turn if you don't have to, if you have something better. But you could and have a 5-card hand. Yeah,
this is just a casual 11 damage turn from Caleb here. Pretty powerful turn in limited.
And so in this case, he's just going to say, you know what, I'll keep the Bramble Spark. I can't do anything else. I have to take this.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess you just, if you're Brandon here, you're like, well, I want to have a turn and try to punch back as much as I can and maybe get the tempo back in my favor.
Well, we've already seen the play of Bramble Spark into Ball Lightning for 2 Arcane be really strong, and that's exactly what we're going to see here. No Fuse, because there's no Earth card in play, but if he wants to do the Ball Lightning here, then you get 2 free Arcane and 3 physical coming at you.
We do know he has that Lightning Press in hand, which could give him an additional, I think was it a yellow Lightning Press?
It looked like it was.
So an additional +2 on this Ball Lightning, which is great because if Ball Lightning hits, it'll do an additional point of damage. So it's a good way to push through some extra damage here.
He could also choose to pitch it away and play his Arsenal card, which I think he keeps taking a look at, which tells me that he may consider playing it as an attack. And you'll need resources, of course, to do that.
Yeah, and of course, he can also just follow it up with a good old Rosetta Thorn for an extra 2 arcane damage.
Yep.
So definitely a good turn here from Brandon.
Is going to block.
Damage is gonna.
Yeah, he's just going to block the 3 here. So he's going to Mark of Lightning to buff the 2. This is a good time to play Mark of Lightning in general. Is when I've played it most often on a Ball Lightning because it pushes 2 damage.
For sure. I mean, I think that's like the best time to play your Mark of Lightning.
And he's going to come in with Arsenal. Oh, look at this. A Lightning Surge for 4 and go again.
Very spicy. So this is a very wide turn from Brandon here. And so I can see why he chose to take some damage. Like, he took some damage, but he's like, hey, I can take some damage now, but I can immediately punch back. And you see this a lot in this format. Yeah. I had multiple games yesterday when I was playing where this was exactly the case, right? I'm like, well, I'll take some damage, but I know that I can follow this up with my own big turn, and it's going to, like, even things out more. And I think that's what makes this format in particular very, very fast, especially in these Briar matchups where they're like I'll take the damage. It doesn't matter because I can hit you back for as much or more. And I think that's really the determining factor, right? If you can punch back for more.
Sure, and this is coming in 4 and go again.
Yeah.
And if it hits, it's going to deal an extra point of damage from the
sure.
Ball Lightning replacement effect. And he can then follow this up with Rosetta Thorn for 2 and 2.
So we have a block for 4, actually, because it's a non-attack action.
That's correct.
It's going to block it out, which is great. Using 1 card to block 4 is really, really good value.
This is one of the benefits of playing as Briar. If you can get some of these Embodiment of Earth tokens to stack up, then all of your non-attacks, which are traditionally bad blocks, become really good blocks.
I think that's really the power of Briar, too. It's not just the arcane damage, because that's great, but it's the ability to be really offensive with the arcane damage, and then on the back end have this great ability to block very, very efficiently, because you want to play with non-attacks in your deck anyway. So it just synergizes so well.
And he takes the 2 and 2. I think that's right, taking the 2 physical here, because you want to keep cards in hand so that you can swing the tempo back in your favor. You did take more damage, so you are basically saying to your opponent that you have the tempo right now, but I'm going to try to hold onto it or grab it back. Oh, maybe he's just going to slam down the Singeing Steelblade 4 and 1 Arcane.
Yeah, I mean, immediately deals 1 Arcane, which is great, creates that Embodiment of Earth, and sends a 4. I want to note for new players out there who might not know a lot of these interactions that the Rosetta Thorn does not create any of those Embodiment of Earth tokens because you only create the Embodiment of Earth tokens on attack action cards, not weapons. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about, like, oh, why didn't he make those tokens? It's only on attack actions.
Yes, indeed. And if card counting is correct, does he have 1 more card in hand?
He definitely has a card. I'm not sure if that's hand
certainly in Arsenal. He has 1 in Arsenal, but I'm curious if he has 1 in hand as well. Here we have a block for a very large amount. I think it was a block for 6, which is very interesting because came across for 4, then he blocked with an Entwine. Trying to block this out, I would imagine, so he doesn't create more Embodiment of Earth tokens.
I think that's definitely a good assessment here.
All right. And that's why, so he can come in for 7.
So we have an Autumn's Touch here. It's just a casual 7 coming in. Noting that he is pitching a very nice pump card that could be used later in the game if we get that far.
And I do want to point this out. This is a really interesting choice because I think this is intentional. Blocking out the way that he did and stopping any of the Singeing Steelblade over the top damage, leak damage, means that right now non-attack action cards in Caleb's hand will block for 3. And so if he had let that 1 point go over, they block for 4. And so then it's an easy non-attack plus attack action block to block 7 here, and you're only pulling 2 cards. In this scenario, you're pulling 2 cards and pushing a point of damage.
I think that's a great thing to point out. Because, basically now it's like, hey, do you have 3 cards to block rather than just 2 cards?
And if this was your hand where you had a non-attack and so tomorrow and an attack action card that you're not going to play, and then 2-card hand basically of Autumn's Touch and a blue to pitch for it, maybe you just say, you know what? Just so that I can push some damage here with Autumn's Touch, I'm going to play these 2 cards. I'm going to get rid of the others. The other option there was to keep the Sotomorrow and then Arsenal it so that you can play it from Arsenal next turn.
Sotomorrow from Arsenal is fantastic because it lets you draw a card. It's a great card to set up a really big go-wide turn where you can non-attack into an attack with go again into like a Rosetta Thorn. But I do like this play as well. Just coming in for 7. Like, no matter what, he's going to have to commit 3 cards or take damage.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's going to deal a little bit of damage is still pretty sweet because he'll get to create one of those Embodiment of Earth tokens.
Exactly. So this sets him up nicely for another turn in the future.
Yeah, and like at this point, like every point of damage is really going to matter. You want to get your opponent down to that. Ooh, I see some spicy stuff in his hand, in Brandon's hand.
Yes.
You definitely want to get your opponent down to the point where it's like the kill zone area.
We have a Singeing Steel Blade and a Sigil of Suffering, and both deal arcane damage. That's what you want to be looking for. Do note that Brandon does actually have an Embodiment of Earth token. I hope he remembers that he has access to that, because that does make some of his non-attacks a little bit more solid. Wow, coming in with the Evergreen.
Yeah, this is another big Evergreen. So I'll meet your 7 with my own 7. Evergreen was not played from the arsenal, so
no.
It does not have its effect, but still 7.
It's pure 7 damage, and that's still really, really good.
And we still have that same breakpoint we talked about in the last round, where Brandon should have an embodiment. So now all of his non-attacks are going to block for 3. So even if he had multiple, it would be tricky to block. Though it does look like, so it looks like he has 1 non-attack. He has a defense reaction, which he's going to use now. That's going to actually block for 3 here because it's the yellow.
It only blocks for 3, so this is still leaking a point of damage, but it is sending 1 arcane back, and you're basically putting your opponent on a clock. If you can get them a little bit lower, then you can set them on a few turn clock, or really a few arcane damage card clock, and that includes your Rosetta Thorn, which is a really, really good source of arcane damage.
And he did keep a nice little Singeing Steel Blade in hand.
Yep.
Which is going to guarantee that 1 arcane damage.
1 arcane damage, 3 attack, and again, he's just slowly bleeding him down with unblockable arcane damage. The runaways do help in this matchup because
100%.
You are playing that mirror match where it really, really matters, and we do see that Caleb has the runaways. Neither player necessarily using Deep Blue, but that could come into play as well. It's just free resources for whatever card you have, and so keeping that as a safety valve is really solid.
I really like Deep Blue on a turn where you think you can go very, very wide. Just banking it for a really, really big turn. And I think that's where it really, really shines. Honestly, I also think Runaways really shines against Briar in particular. Against some of the other heroes in Tales of Aria, it's not that great. Like against Oldhim, for example.
It has no utility, unfortunately, against Oldhim.
But like against Briar, pretty good. And at least in Sealed here, we see a lot of Briars, so that actually ups the value of Runaways in your Sealed pool quite a bit.
Incredibly, yes. It ups it immensely. If you can get a Runaways, you're really happy, because as you've seen so far, we've seen a good number of people trying to play Briar and trying to get that arcane damage to go through.
Oh, here we see the Runaways getting popped. It's one of the few ways to actually prevent arcane damage in this set.
This is very interesting. He took the arcane damage, which is how he can play it, but he just used the Runaways to block 1 of the 3, so he didn't have to lose a card from his hand. So he takes 2 in this scenario, which is actually putting him very close into kill range.
Yeah, 4 health is pretty scary, but it allowed him to keep a decent hand here. So we're going to start off with an Entwined Lightning. Going to fuse it with a Shock Striker, so that's, 4 Go Again?
4 with Go Again. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, start to a great turn here. It's going to be very interesting to see if Brandon decides to block a lot, or to maybe take a little bit of damage here and try to follow up with a really big turn.
Well,
he does have a little bit of a lead with his life.
We can see the composition of his hand, and we can see that he's got he's blocking with a Veloflash, and I think this is the right play because he does have a large attack and a blue pitch. So he can just go to a 2-card hand here and have some sort of a return. And that's exactly what you want when your opponent's at 4, because then they have to start making tough decisions. So if you can avoid taking too much damage on this turn, that's a really cool reveal.
This is scary.
Oh, no, it's a really cool reveal. So Veloflash here, just for anybody at home that hasn't really seen Veloflash or know how this works, if you fuse it, it allows you to play a non-attack at instant speed. And in doing so, if that non-attack is a card with Go Again on the bottom, then the Go Again will refresh an action point. So Veloflash doesn't have Go Again, but by doing the fuse effect and then playing a non-attack Go Again, it basically does.
Yeah, this is going to be really scary because he can play that, exactly like Steven was saying, he can play that non-attack that he just revealed, pump up the Veloflash at instant speed, get an action point.
Well, it won't. I don't think it'll affect the
because it does the next
attack. But you're still refreshing your action point, meaning Rosetta Thorn is online and very scary.
So I guess in that situation, you don't really get the benefit of the plus from that non-attack, but you still get a Rosetta Thorn with the 2 arcane damage.
Yeah, and so that's going to be very relevant because we're going to see this is attacking for 4, and then a Rosetta Thorn coming in for 2 and 2 is technically attacking for 4, pushing that break point.
Yeah, and then he's still got 2 resources floating, so definitely easily can do this if he wants to take that line.
Yeah,
and I think it's a good chance he does take this line.
The other option is that he's got something very interesting from Arsenal, and if he does, then we have some really, really crazy stuff going on.
He's also building a lot of those tokens on this turn.
That's the beauty of using the 4-attack breakpoint. Oh, and it's an Autumn's Touch for 6.
Scary.
It is buffed by the Weave Lightning because...
So it's going to be a...
Oh, you know what? It's not buffed by the Weave Lightning because that only buffs elemental attacks and lightning attacks. So Autumn's Touch is still just a vanilla 6.
It's still 6. 6 is pretty good. But yeah, you're 100% correct.
6
Autumn's
is
Touch.
lethal.
6 is lethal, yeah.
So yeah, it's still pretty good. So it is going to steal a card from his hand and basically make it to where his next turn is just attacking with a Rosetta Thorn or blocking out.
Which is actually definitely where you don't want to be if you're Brandon. Like, because this basically... Oh, so yeah, just block it out.
Block it out is the right play, I think, because you're stopping any more damage. You're trying to avoid taking down to that kill range at, like, the 3 or the 2. And just hoping that you can do something. And it's unfortunate that he drew into a hand of all attacks because he couldn't make any use of the 2 embodiment tokens that he built.
That is 100% true. And, you know, if Brandon is just like, I draw it, pass back, your embodiments are now gone. So you don't really get value out of that, even though you just had a really nice turn.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate for Brandon. Like, anytime you have to just draw and pass it's kind of a bummer, right? But, I mean, that's what your opponent wants to do. Like, that's really where you want to be. And so now Caleb has all of the tempo. He really needs to follow this up with another really, really big turn to maintain that tempo.
He does.
Because he's still a little bit behind. It's pretty close at this point, right? 5-4, pretty close. But, you know, Caleb definitely has that tempo right now.
He has the tempo. He has the ability to pop Deep Blue.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
That's
we have
scary.
A Sting of Sorcery.
That's scary.
Sting of Sorcery is a Majestic wherein it gives... It's an aura. It comes into play. It stays in play until it's destroyed. And in this case, it gets destroyed at the end of the turn.
Yeah.
And it gives every attack this turn, every attack action card this turn... oh my god. It gives every attack action turn this turn, deal 1 arcane damage, and now Ball Lightning says, no, scratch that. 2 arcane damage, please.
2 arcane damage.
I'll have 2.
I have been in Brandon's situation twice, and it is absolutely brutal. So you're just looking at this, and you're like, how do I survive this?
So he knocks it down to 3, knocks him down to 3, and he's going to want to block here with a card from hand. And then at that point, he blocks from a card from hand, and any other attacks that come across will also, in this combat chain, get the Arcane plus the buff.
So he just revealed a Bramble Spark. So Bramble Spark into a Lightning.
Oh, and he's just got the lethal on there. The Bramble Spark into Lightning Surge says, well, you know what? The Bramble Spark actually cuts the combat chain, but nevertheless, it looks like it was going to be lethal in any way, shape, or form. It's still very, very scary turn. A really, really dirty little play there at the end with the Sting of Sorcery, which is a Majestic, so you don't see that very often.
It's so gross. I've actually played against it twice in Limited, and it has killed me both times I've played against it. It is an absurdly good card in Limited, and so I am not surprised to see it come down and then just basically define the result of that game.
Indeed, and playing a Bramble Spark to give the arcane damage, even in that scenario, it might have just completely sealed the deal on the spot. Nevertheless, a very scary mirror match to play into because once you get to those low life totals, you just have to be worried about arcane damage in any way, shape, or form, and that game exactly proved that. We saw both players trying to dance above that life total where they're in that danger zone, and eventually one player just droops right below it, and then they go for the kill shot with the arcane damage.
It's like wolves. You smell blood, and they just go for it, pounce on them.
Indeed. So in a few moments, after we take a short break, we're going to jump back into round 5. We'll watch another game with you. So stay put. Don't go too far. We'll see you in a second.